Everyone, Holly Rustick here. We go with We Go Consulting, We Go Grants. Anyways, we're going to be talking about your grant team checklist and kickoff meeting and your grant time action plan. So anyways, what we're going to look at first is the kickoff meeting one. And this one is quite long, it looks kind of quite long, but it's not, okay? So what you first want to do is you really want to designate a person for each kind of item. So you want to look at your executive director, what are they doing? Now, like I said in the book, they may not have to be doing the entire thing, obviously not. That's why you're a part of this too. And you might be an ED who's doing it all, but you should really try to go ahead and let other people help you out. So what you want to have though is a grant lead. So the executive director is going to kind of oversee it. They have the final say anyways before it goes to the board. So they want to be a part, you want them to be part of the process, because if they're not, and you go ahead as a grant writer and you write this like boss grant, that's awesome, and then you submit it and your ED's like, that's actually not in our vision or whatever, that would be really frustrating. So, but it can happen. So you want to go ahead and make sure they're at least part of the meeting so they can approve what you want to go forward as, or they can give you direction. You might say, I have no idea what to do. So, you know, or what direction we're going in. So you really want them to be a part of that. And then of course you want the grant lead, and that's usually yourself, the person who's invested into this book or course. And, you know, so you want to be able to have one person that ties all the ends together. And then it would be great, of course, have your budget person there, your accountant, your bookkeeper, your CPA, whoever that person is, just to make sure that you know what the categories are. You know, is it all the same as the federal categories, or how does your categories in your bookkeeping kind of look like? Is that personnel, fringe benefits, equipment, supplies, etc.? And you want to know what if you have an indirect cost rate, what the percentage is. While you're figuring that out too. So you really want to make sure that your budget person is on board. And then your grant coordinator. Oh, and just the other thing about your budget person is, for instance, you may already have salaries that are already set up, that are already pre-approved. So a program coordinator one might get $38,316 per year, and then they have the fringe benefits of whatever retirement and whatever this and that. And you as a grant writer might not know this. So you want to have that person, that budget person in, so you know what all of those different types are. So if you say, okay, we need to have a program coordinator, or we need a director, or we need a resident assistant, or whatever that is, that they would be there, so they would tell you what this is the salary that they would have, and these are the fringe benefits, so you can kind of look at that. And then of course, your grant coordinator would be a great person to have. So if you had someone to kind of help you out, to get all those letters of support sent out, to get the non-federal share letters sent out, just to follow up on everything, that would be great. If not, that might be you, and that's fine, but just go ahead and write yourself down on that line. And then the grant submission officer. Now, this could be your ED, it could be you. Whoever has basically, especially if you're submitting for a federal grant, you're going to have a SAM number, and you're going to have a grants.gov workspace number, actually, like a password and username and all that. You need to have that information when you submit. So if it's the executive director, whoever it is, they might give you their information so you can submit it, but you have to designate who that's going to be, because I can't stress enough how things happen, especially on the last day of submitting a grant, when everything's due or when you want to get it up. And once again, try not to actually submit on the due date. Try to get everything done a few days before, because stuff will happen. It just will. Technical stuff happens. All of a sudden, you lost your SAM number, whatever. I don't know, but things happen. I've seen it happen a million times, that just weird, random, freak stuff happens if you're trying to submit at the last minute. And it always takes longer than you think it's going to. So just make sure you have designated who that person's going to be. And that's all what you can write down here, and it has a little explanation for each of those roles. So have that kickoff meeting as soon as you know it's going to happen. And then, of course, if you have a specialist on board, so if you have somebody that's actually going to be there and kind of, you have to get certain information for the grant. So it might be somebody who does evaluations, or, you know, that has data tracking whatever they're doing, or they're developing curriculum, or whoever that specialist that you might need, make sure that you put that person down. Usually it could be somebody within your organization, but just make sure that they're kind of a part of the kickoff meeting too if they're going to be a part of this, because even if they just write it and then send it to your grant lead, and then the grant lead kind of rewrites it to make it sound like the same voice for that narrative, that's fine, but you might need to get certain information. You don't always need a specialist, but sometimes you will. So you want to make sure you know who that person is. And then the grant lead, what you really want to do is you have to look at all the information that comes in and make sure it all lines up. And, you know, like that beautiful puzzle, it's all different bits and pieces of it. So if all of a sudden your bookkeeper is putting things in the budget that you never talked about in the narrative, that's going to be a huge red flag. So you can't just say, okay, you budget person, you know, you put it in, and then I'm going to do this part, you're going to do that part. I mean, that's great to like delegate and have everyone doing different parts, but if you don't have somebody to kind of look at all the parts and make sure they fit together at the end, that can be such, I mean, there's going to be flaws. It's not going to be perfect. So you need somebody to kind of wrap it up and to make sure it's all fit. The other thing is your budget person could leave stuff out of the budget because they didn't read your narrative that's all flowery and beautiful and pretty, and they don't know all the different things that need to go into the budget. So if anything's in your budget, make sure you have it in your narrative, and vice versa. And even the other thing with the specialists, what they talk about, you need to make sure it makes sense what the grant is actually saying, right? So, yeah, just make sure you have somebody that ties it all together. Otherwise, there may and probably will be pieces left out or just that don't make sense. Okay, another thing to look at is SAM. You got in this kickoff meeting, you got to make sure, is your SAM up to date? Is your SAM number up to date? And we don't really go into this a lot. I'm going to really go into this in my next book when we do how to actually start a nonprofit, make sure your organization's up to par, and I will go over that in detail. But basically you want to know that you have all the information needed for your login, usernames, and so forth for federal grants. Of course, if you're doing this as a foundation, you don't need that, but just, you know, this is something that's kind of, you want to have everything lined up, because they might ask for other numbers like your DUNS or EIN, and you want to make sure you have those too. So just if you have anything with your finances to do with grants that have numbers, make sure they're up to date, okay? Are you registered on grants.gov? So you want to make sure you answer that question if you're applying for a federal grant. And then of course, who will submit the grant? Is there any non-federal matching needed? All right, so you want to talk about this from the get-go. From that first meeting, you want to say, hey, and while your budget person's in there too, and all your specialists in your little group, your team, you want to say what the budget is, and then is there non-federal? Is there any matching? Is there any leveraging that's required? And you want to talk about it right there and then. Who are we going to get it from, or what are we going to get it from, and delegate a person to get that letter, okay? And you want to start that right away. And the same thing with letters of support. You want to make sure if you can have attachments and you can have letters of support, include them. And then find out, who are we going to ask? Like, is there community members or resource members, you know, that we can actually get that letter from? And then who's going to get it? Delegate somebody. Who's actually going to send out that letter? And then who's going to follow up? And, you know, when are you going to get it by, and all that? And then, of course, what's the general needs statement of the project that you're working on? Okay, we need to get scholarships for sports because there's a high diabetes in our community for youth, that sort of thing. So you want to just make sure you have a general idea. It doesn't have to be all these stats and statistics and research and da-da-da, but you want to have a general sense. So when your grant specialist is going in and they're doing the research, or your grant lead is doing the research, you know, they have an idea what to actually research. And then your target demographic. Who are we going to serve? What are we actually going to do with this grant anyways? This is great. It's $5 million or whatever. We're going to get it. But what are we doing? What is the project? It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to have a framework. You want to have that discussion where you're like, okay, we're going to talk about this as a framework, what we're actually going to do. Sorry, that's like super loud when I turn the pages. But so, and what will the project change or improve? So in our community, what will this do? If we get these scholarships for soccer, how is that actually gonna reduce the diabetes? Is that gonna help? Like, think about it. You know, what's our impact? What's our goal? Like, talk about that. These are things that sound abstract, but they're quite, you know, what are we actually doing this for? And that goes back to, don't just chase the money. Oh, it's $5 million. Yeah, but it's for whatever. It's for something that's like, I don't know, infrastructure. Yeah, but we're going to apply for it for scholarships. Well, that doesn't make any sense, okay? You don't want to just chase money for doing it. I mean, grant reviewers, they're going to catch right away, and it's just going to be like, what? So you don't want to waste your time and energy doing that either. You want to stick to what your goals are. Does it relate to our overall vision? What are our objectives? What are we actually going to do? And are they smart? Just break it down. Is it specific, measurable? How are we going to measure it? Can we achieve it? Is it relevant? And then is it time bound? We have to do it within the grant duration. So any challenges that you might come across? Well, if we put these scholarships up, what's going to happen? Maybe we'll have too many people apply. What are we going to do? Oh, we'll have a selection process. Oh, okay. Or maybe not enough people are going to apply. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to, let's look at those interns that we used last time, get some word out and do some awareness at those, at different awareness months and activities and events and fairs that are going on. Okay, sure. When you have all the minds in one room, this is where you can come up really quickly, actually, with all kinds of great things. You can put a project together in a couple hours with these minds at the table, with your budget, your ED, your grants, and if any specials that you need in a coordinator. You can just throw this together because you know what you're already doing in your organization. But once you ask these tactical questions, this is when you can really narrow it down. And as long as you have this framework, this backbone, your grant lead can just go after it and they can get it done. Your budget person knows exactly what they're supposed to be working on, and everything is very clear. So partnerships, any partnerships, who do we need to utilize in this? Once again, that goes back to your letters of support. Who are we asked for letters of support? What makes sense? Well, let's ask the schools that have, where we can do outreach. Okay, great. So who knows the principal? Who knows the superintendent? Whatever. And then you can work your networks there too. How will the community be involved in this process and the whole project? So who, are you actually going to be able to go out there? Oh yeah, we're going to do that outreach event at that youth concert that they have every summer. And then we're going to also, we have mini Olympics going on in our town or something, and we're going to reach out there. We're going to do some advertising, or we're going to call it outreach materials in our budget, to go ahead and promote ourselves and to promote our brand and to promote the project that we're doing so we can recruit more people to actually come in and take part of this. That's really cool. So what staff are going to be needed? And this goes back to, do you already have the budget in place to hire the staff, or what are they going to get paid? Okay, that's an important question. Who's in charge of all of this? So you need to make sure you go ahead and make sure how many copies of the grant are needed. So sometimes, you might be mailing them in, which doesn't happen very often anymore, hard copies. But you want to, make sure, okay, how many copies or how many pages is the whole grant, etc. So you have all that kind of thing. And then, are there any other challenges coming up in your calendar? Break out your organizational calendar. Oh my gosh, we have our annual fundraising that same week, all right? So we actually need to get this grant done 2 weeks or a week before it's even due because of that. So you want to make sure that you go ahead and you break out your calendar too to see what's going on. Anything that might come up in that area, that time frame. Or a lot of people are on holiday. That's around Christmas time. We actually, so-and-so will be out, they'll be away, or they'll be on vacation. So you want to make sure that you have everything scheduled. And then who's the alternative for submitting the grant? So if so-and-so can't get it done, then who's going to tag team to do it together? So those are just some things to look at in that grant team checklist. So when you have that kickoff meeting, get that checklist, go through the questions, jot it down, break out, type it in there. And that can also be your minutes too from that meeting. So that's pretty cool. And then of course we have the more tangible grant timeline action list. Now this is your action plan. So this is actually who's doing what. Okay, here's the activity. So once again, we talk about your SAM being up to date, your grants.gov. But then it just breaks it down. Okay, so for example, send all docs to lead grant writer, nonprofit status, organizational chart, financial policies, conflict of interest, resumes, job descriptions. Okay, so then it has the next cell over, who is the person responsible for that? So you're going to write down the person or people responsible to get that to that grant lead, all that information, and then when they're going to start and when the actual deadline is. And this is great because that kickoff meeting that you have, you're going to go ahead and you're going to bust out this grant timeline too to say, okay, now that we have all this information, when are we going to get it done? When are we going to piece together this entire grant? And who's going to do what? Now, this is so important to know what you need to do, who's going to do it, and when the deadline is. All right, for each different thing. We're not just looking at the grant deadline, say, is June 22nd, all right? So everything just will get it done on June 22nd. No, you won't. Okay, you're going to break it down. You're going to, first I need all that organizational chart, Get that to me by June 1st. And then the budget, I need a draft from the accountant. So the accountant's responsible for that, and they're going to get it to the grant lead by June 5th. All right, the first one. And then you can even have a second one. Okay, our final draft for budget is due June 7th. All right. So, and then letters of support, the same thing. So who's going to do that? The grant coordinator is going to do that, and they're going to kick it out first. They're going to kick it out to the people, let's say, June 2nd, and then they're going to do a follow-up. They're going to ask for all the letters of support back from their friends and community members and partners by, let's say, June 12th, right? Okay. And then, but then they're going to do a follow-up on June 10th. Okay, so you want to go ahead and schedule that out because people are busy, your partners are busy, we all know that. Getting those letters, especially if you have MOUs. Now, MOUs have a little bit, memorandums of understanding, have a little bit more heavyweight to it and a little bit more going back and forth. So you want to do those like right away. So you really want to get that all going. So that whole timeline is going to segment the grant process so you know exactly what you need to get done. You need to get your letters and you need to get this. And your grant coordinator could be doing that. Your grant lead could just be working on, I'm going to get the needs, section done by this time. I'm going to get the objectives and the outcomes done by, in 4 more days for my first draft. And then they're going to send it out to so-and-so, and then they're going to start working on the project design. And then while they're working on that, they have somebody else reviewing the needs. And then as soon as they're done with the needs, they're going to send them the needs so they can do all the update. They're going to send them the project design so they can review. So it goes in this whole flow. But if you save everything, I'm going to save everything, and then I'm going to send it to the ED for review the day before. All right, that's going to be a nightmare, and it's not going to be the best grant written at all. So if you want a winning grant, break it down, get your team together, and designate. Now, if you don't designate, all of a sudden you're running to your accountant a day before the grant's due and saying, I need all this information. Well, you know what? They might have something else going on. They may have payroll. They might have all this other stuff going on, and they're not going to be able to get to your information. And plus, they're going to be like, who are you? You're like, whatever, they're not going to put that as a priority. But if they're sitting at the meeting and they have that tasked out to them, like it's this whole, everyone's getting a task, everybody knows their responsibility, then they're going to want to contribute and they're going to be on task because they're going to know that they have a deadline. That's another important reason to put in all the dates, not the deadline of the grant, but the deadline that they need to get certain tasks done and over to the grant lead. Now that is super important because then it's going to flow well. It's not going to put pressure on anybody, and it's not going to be, some weird conflict. You're going to avoid a lot of weird conflict. So you want to have just all of this spelled out, and those are your resources for this. So good luck with that, and let me know if you have any other questions. That would be great. Otherwise, this is your best way to go ahead and get it done, and to get it done well, and to get it done in advance. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.